Hey guys, how's it going? We've got a heavy hitter for you all today. We are going to be dipping our toe into the vast and weird world of Greek mythology, taking a look into the myths and legends surrounding the hero Theseus. Most people who have dabbled in Greek myth are aware of Theseus' most famed exploit, that being his slaying of the monstrous Minotaur, but there is more to his tale than just the Cretan killings. Today is dedicated to looking into a Greek hero near and dear to my own heart and discussing his life in both myths and how he has been portrayed in FGO. So without further ado, let's get into it. Theseus, much like many a Greek hero, is oftentimes described as a demigod. His father was the king of Athens, Aegeus, who wanted an heir but was unable to produce one on his own, so he went to the ancient Greek equivalent of Google, the Oracle of Delphi, and asked her what he should do. Her response was as follows: "Do not loosen the bulging mouth of the wineskin until you have reached the height of Athens, lest you die of grief." Aegeus was confused and left the oracle feeling disappointed. He told the prophecy to a friend and fellow king, Pythias of Troezen, who understood the prophecy and proceeded to get Aegeus drunk and gave him his daughter Aethra. A lot of A-names in this story, just try and keep up. Athena then came to Aethra in a dream and instructed her to go to a sacred island and pray in secret. She did so and was blessed by Poseidon, leaving her pregnant with Theseus. The next day, Aegeus took his sword and sandals and buried them beneath a great rock and instructed Aethra that if their son had the makings of a ruler, he could move the rock and retrieve these items before coming back to his father. With that, Aegeus left back for Athens, where he would eventually be smitten with Medea, who became his consort. And yes, I do mean that Medea. So, Aethra raised Theseus, who grew up to be a brave and heroic young lad. Once he was of a good age and strength, his mother told him the truth of his father's identity and was able to retrieve his father's items. He then set out to see Aegeus. Theseus, in a bid to show his bravery, took the more difficult land route for his journey, and as such had to travel by the 6 entrances of the underworld. These are known as the 6 labors of Theseus. At the first area, Epidaurus, he encountered another demigod, the bandit Periphetes, who was a son of Hephaestus. Like his father, he was lame and had a massive bronze club as a crutch to walk around, and he would pound passersby into the ground so that he could rob them. Theseus was able to defeat him and took the bronze club for his own, which would become his weapon of choice. At the second area, Isthmian, he encountered another bandit named Sinis. Sinis was notorious for his sadistic method of killing people. He would either request a traveler's aid in bending a great pine down, at which point he would release it, fleeing them into the air where they would fall to their deaths, or he would capture travelers, tie them between 2 pines that he had bent, and then release them, ripping the person in half. Theseus, suspecting a trick while he was helping bend the pines, tied Sinis to them instead and released the pines, killing him. Theseus then seduced his daughter, who would later bear him a child. The third area, near the village of Crommyon, was ravaged by a monstrous pig known as the Crommyon sow. This sow was of monstrous proportions and was the daughter of Typhoon and Echidna, as well as the mother of the Caledonian boar. Theseus was able to overpower the beast and slay it himself. According to Plutarch, the sow was a nickname for a horrible bandit woman who had given birth to many obese children, and that this is who Theseus slew instead. I am opting to ignore Plutarch on this one. The fourth area was near the town of Megara, where a bandit named Skreon had taken up residence at a particularly thin part of the seaside. Now, Skreon is of importance to Greek myth, as being the great-grandfather of the hero Achilles. What did he do, you may ask yourself? He would stop travelers on the path and only let them through if they washed his feet. Once they had knelt down to do so, he would kick them off the cliff, where they would either be dashed to death on the rocks or devoured by a massive sea turtle. Sources vary, but usually agree that Theseus kicked him off the cliff where the same turtle would eat him. At the fifth area, Eleusis, he encountered King Cretion. Cretion was also a demigod and renowned for both his strength and cruelty. He would challenge strangers to wrestling matches, and if they refused, he would force them to abide. He made the claim that anyone able to beat him could have his entire kingdom, but because of his godly strength, no one was able to do so. He would then kill anyone who lost to him. Theseus took up the challenge and beat him with his skill rather than brute strength, and ended the fight by lifting the king above his head and dashing him on the ground, killing him. In some versions, Theseus then went on to lay all the king's daughters, but this contradicts the fact that other tales say that he had one daughter, Alope, whom Cretion had tortured and buried alive. For his final labor, still in Eleusis, he encountered yet another son of Poseidon named Procrustes, who had 2 beds of different sizes that he would offer to weary travelers. He always offered the least fitting bed to the traveler and then forced them to fit into it. He did so either by dismembering them if they were too large or stretching them out if they were too short. Once again, Theseus would kill the bandit using the exact same method, this time chopping off his legs before decapitating him. With this, he finally made it into Athens. Theseus kept his identity a secret, but was recognized as a powerful youth, clearly from royal lineage, and as such was offered a place to stay in Aegeus' court. Aegeus himself was suspicious of the boy, but was unable to recognize him, leading me to believe that Aegeus maybe wasn't the brightest candle in the Parthenon. But his consort at the time, Medea, immediately recognized who he was. Believe it or not, Medea did have her child in mind, namely the non-murdered one, Metis, who before Theseus' arrival would certainly be the next to take the throne of Athens. So, Medea, being Medea, took advantage of the situation and wished to test Theseus. She asked that he go and capture the Marathonian bull, aka the Cretan bull, aka the father of the Minotaur, and bring it to Athens. Theseus agreed and set off for Marathon where the bull was located. On the way, he encountered an old woman named Hecale, who gave him a place to stay in a storm. The old woman promised to make a sacrifice to Zeus on the young man's return if he was successful, and when the storm broke, Theseus left with good tidings from her. He was successful in the bull's capture and returned to tell Hecale of his victory, but she had died of old age. Theseus would later build a suburb of Athens and name it in her honor. This suburb still exists to this day and is called Echale. We now enter a slight divergence in the stories, but they go with the same result. In one rendition, they keep the bull, and in the other, they sacrifice it. This will be important later. Theseus' success did not stop Medea from trying herself to get rid of the youth, poisoning his wine at the celebratory banquet. As he was about to drink from the goblet, Aegeus had a eureka moment, realizing all that was happening after seeing Theseus wearing his old sandals and sword. He knocked the cup out of Theseus' hand, and Medea was forced to flee. Reunited, Theseus officially became the crowned prince heir to Athens. As you may imagine, this didn't sit well with everybody. Several parties had been eyeing the throne due to the king's lack of an heir, biding their time until they could install one of their own onto the throne. With that idea in ruins, these parties would need a more hands-on approach. One such group was the Pallantides, the 50 sons of Pallas, Aegeus' younger brother. They were set to be the next in line once Aegeus had died, but now these hopes were more or less dashed. So, they plotted to kill Theseus in an ambush. While one group would appear to be marching towards the palace to take it, another would be lying in ambush and jump Theseus when his guard was down. They could then dispatch Aegeus and the guards of the palace in the exact same manner. Theseus, however, was informed of this plot by a messenger and ambushed his ambushers, scaring them out of attempting the same thing again. Thus, for a time, there was peace. Now enters the sports arc. Athens had an event called the Panathenaic Games, which in essence is a smaller scale Olympics event geared towards the worship of Athena rather than Zeus. During this event, men and youths from around Athens and some from outside of it would gather to participate in the events with the chance to win a crown, money, and best of all, 140 large vases of olive oil. During this event, the eldest son of King Minos of Crete, a man named Androgeus, arrived to participate. In one instance of the story, he wins several events, and as a result, the jealous Pallantides, still licking their wounds from when they were bested by Theseus, opted to assassinate him. In a different instance, the Cretan bull escapes its confines and tramples him to death. In both cases, the man dies and word gets back to King Minos, who is furious. He sails the Cretan navy to Athens and demands that King Aegeus hand over his son's killers. Unable to produce them in either case, be it through not knowing who they were or unable to reclaim the bull, Aegeus refused. In some accounts, this resulted in an all-out war that resulted in the Cretans praying to Zeus for aid, who then cast a famine on Athens. The only way to be rid of this famine would be to give Minos anything that he asked for. Minos stated that he wanted 14 youths from Athens, 7 boys and 7 girls every 7 years, so that he could sacrifice them, to which Aegeus reluctantly agreed. A different version says that they wished to avoid war altogether, and that the aforementioned agreement was met through negotiations instead. Regardless, this sacrificing of 14 youths soon came to pass. This happened twice, and on the third round, Theseus asked to join in place of one of the young men. Before he left, he told his father that if he were successful, he would return flying white sails, and if not, the boat would have black ones. Thus, he set off for Crete. Upon his arrival, he met one of the daughters of King Minos, Ariadne, who fell in love with him at first sight. She gave him a ball of yarn crafted by Daedalus, the great inventor, and a sword to defend himself with. She then gave him advice on how to navigate the labyrinth. Following every word, he tied the yarn to the entrance and soon wound up in the center of the labyrinth where he saw the Minotaur sleeping. Perhaps now is a good time to pause and talk about what the Minotaur is. We know him by the name Asterios, named after Minos' foster father with the meaning of lightning. His tale goes like this. After Minos became king of Crete, he wanted to show his power to his brothers and so prayed to Poseidon for a snow-white bull and was given the Cretan bull. The deal was that he would be given the bull to show his divine favor, but would have to sacrifice it to Poseidon to show his faith. Naturally, Minos stiffed Poseidon on his end of the deal, and so to punish him, made Minos' wife Pasiphae fall in love with the bull. She commissioned Daedalus to craft her an outfit so she could mate with the creature, to which he agreed. The union produced Asterios, the bull-headed man. While Pasiphae tried to raise him normally, his bestial nature would eventually become too much to handle. Thus, Minos sought the assistance of the Oracle of Delphi, who told him to make the labyrinth and trap the beast inside. He made this request of Daedalus, who made the impossibly complex superstructure, and was able to appease the creature from escaping by feeding it. It was this savage, demigod-esque creature that Theseus would come face to face with. The pair traded blows back and forth until eventually Theseus was able to pin it down and land a mortal hit. It was after this that he decapitated the creature and carried its head along with the other 13 Athenians behind him out of the labyrinth. Now, Fate tells a different story, and this is one that plays on a comment regarding why Theseus agreed to go to Crete. In one telling of the story, he claims that he wishes to speak with the monster. This could be interpreted as him wanting to deal with the Minotaur himself, or that he actually wished to see if it could be reasoned with. Fate tells the story of Theseus reaching the Minotaur and seeing not a monster at all, but something more akin to a scared and abused child who believed he deserved to be punished. Despite this, Theseus still fought him to avenge the people that he had killed, and after landing the mortal blow, sat beside him and talked about their blessings and curses. Through this, Asterios and Theseus became close friends, with the latter never once believing the former to be a monster, thus Asterios died. Snap back to reality, and Theseus now flees Crete with the Athenians, and Ariadne back to Athens. At one point in the journey, Theseus abandons Ariadne on the island of Naxos. There are a few different tellings as to why this happened. One of the more popular ones is that she was already married to the god Dionysus, and he demanded her return. Another is that he was instructed by Athena to leave the girl, and another still is that he simply felt no love for her, and so left her as she slept one day. Regardless, this is where she bows out of this story. In their haste to return home, the Athenians forgot to change the sails from black to white. Thus, once they came within eyeshot of Athens, King Aegeus saw the black sails and presumed his son was dead. Overcome with grief, he leapt from the watchtower into the sea, which has forever bore his name, the Aegean Sea. With King Aegeus' death, Theseus became the king of Athens. Alright, now we're entering into the more murky territory of Theseus, but one that needs to be talked about because it involves a certain angry Amazon. Theseus at one point married the Amazon Hippolyta. In some instances he kidnaps her, in others Heracles kidnaps her and gives her to Theseus, in others still, she falls in love with Theseus and abandons the Amazons to be with him. You may remember that Theseus and Hippolyta are central figures in Shakespeare's A Midsummer's Night Dream and the temporary playthings of Oberon. That's neither here nor there, but worth mentioning. Regardless, the two are wed and had a child together, Hippolytus. Somehow, Hippolyta dies. In some instances, it is because of a raid by the Amazons led by Penthesilea. In others, Theseus abandons her in favor of a different wife, Phaedra, who was a sister to Ariadne and thus the Minotaur. As a result of this, she then crashes the wedding with her Amazons but is killed. This isn't even getting into the fact that Herc supposedly killed her back when he was doing his labors in order to get her girdle. This is what I mean when I say it gets murky. Much of Greek myth was originally exclusively told orally. By virtue of the medium, the storyteller gets free rein and can alter the story as they see fit. Or, perhaps more humanly, they forgot details and merged them with other popular stories, resulting in this jumbled mess. Regardless of how, Hippolyta dies and Theseus remarries Phaedra. Soon, tales of Theseus' exploits became known to others in power, and he is challenged one day by Pirithous, the king of the Lapiths. Pirithous stole Theseus' cattle and challenged him to take them back. When the two prepared to meet for battle, they became completely captivated by each other and laid down their arms, becoming close friends instead. This is one of those instances where historians will describe the most homoerotic possible detail, the meeting between these two, and then say that they were just best friends. I'm not going to incite anything more than to say that they were ancient Greeks, and that his wife Phaedra was jealous of how intimate her husband was with someone other than her. In fact, it is for this reason that Phaedra attempted to seduce Theseus' son, because both were neglected by their carefree heroic patriarch. Now, if the name Pirithous sounds familiar to you, that is because it was his wedding that was the cause of the centaur Amachia, which involved the deaths of a number of centaurs and the eventual death of Canis. During this event, Ovid claims that Theseus once again showed his heroism by slaying the strongest centaur, Eurytus. The other legend pertaining to him involves the ever-classic descent of the two into the underworld. The pair had made a vow to marry daughters of Zeus, resulting in the kidnapping of Helen of Troy, who was not of age at the time, so was left to mature in the care of Theseus' home, only for her to later be rescued by the Dioscuri. Pirithous, on the other hand, made the decision to go after not just any daughter of Zeus, but also the wife of the god Hades, Persephone. Theseus accompanied his friend to the underworld for the task. As they explored the depths of hell, they decided to take a break and sat upon a rock. Feeling strange, Theseus attempted to stand but found himself unable. He then turned to his friend and saw that Pirithous too had turned to him, as both were turning into stone. Soon, the Furies and other hellish tormentors appeared and the heroes were dragged away into the depths of Tartarus. They stayed this way until Heracles came to complete his 12th labor. He freed Theseus, who was granted forgiveness by Persephone, but when they tried to save Pirithous, the entirety of the underworld shook violently, denying his retrieval. Thus, Theseus was forced to leave his friend behind in Hell for the crime of trying to steal the Lord of Hell's wife. To this day, it is believed that he is frozen as a stone. Note that in this state of petrification, he is still able to think, feel, and despair, as the story tells of how Theseus himself did all of these things during his own detainment. So, Pirithous is forever trapped in hell for his crime in such a state. On a more lighthearted note though, supposedly when Herc pulled Theseus from the stone, part of his ass came off, making it smooth and shiny. On his return, Theseus more or less just became a feature of Athenian royalty, and became something of a cameo character in other legends such as those of the Argonauts and Oedipus. He would eventually lose popularity in Athens, and fled to the island of Skyros, led by Lycomedes. This is another name that you may recognize, as he was the man who hid Achilles from Odysseus by dressing him in drag and claiming that he was one of his daughters. Lycomedes, for unknown reasons, pushed Theseus off of a cliff on Skyros, leading to the hero's death. It is believed that he did this because he feared that Theseus would try to usurp him, and so had him removed from the equation. Regardless of why, this marked the death of Theseus. Theseus is an integral fixture of this era of Greek mythology. Whether you like him or hate him, he helped to shape a number of various myths that stand head and above other Greek heroes with his achievements. He, along with Pirithous, are marked by Homer as being among some of the greatest men the earth ever bred. He is a fascinating character in myth and one of my favorite Greek heroes, and his fate interpretation is pretty interesting as well. But that's it. Theseus, in the books. Thank you all so much for watching. Every time I put out a Behind the Servants video, I get a comment saying that people are glad to see that this isn't a retired series. It's not. I plan to try and make these once a month if I can. In fact, you can vote on who we cover every month over on Patreon with the $3 tier. So if you're interested in supporting me and making these happen, please consider stopping by. Otherwise, check out the Twitch, Discord, and Twitter. Do all the YouTube things, but for now guys, keep your chin up. Peace.